The words from the Gospel of John, who understood Jesus in a more philosophical way than so many others did. John shares the philosophy and the theology of the early church and the message that came from Jesus. And then quite often, John is the only one who quotes what Jesus has said. And so we listen intently. Do not be worried and upset, Jesus told them. Believe in God, believe also in me. There are many rooms in my Father's house, and I am going to prepare a place for you. I would not tell you this if it were not so. And after I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to myself, so that where you will be, where I am. You know how to get to the place where I am going. And I love this. Thomas, who's constantly asking questions or making statements. Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way to get there? Jesus answered him, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. No one goes to the Father except by me. Now that you have known me, he said to them, you will know my Father also. And from now on, you do know him, and you have seen him. Well, it appears that the earliest notation that we have historically of the observance of All Saints' Day, which is tomorrow, occurred sometime in the middle 300s, 4th century. And it occurred as a special event that had been celebrated for some time, apparently, as it's reported by a couple of the writings of the priests and bishops that were part of the early Eastern portion of the evolving Christian community that we know existed then as the Catholic Church. It was that Eastern church that had experienced the disciples, many of whom, if not at least 10 of the initial 11 following the suicide, we believe, of Judas, 11 were left. One lived to die of old age. The other 10 were martyrs. They died horrible deaths. You may, of course, recall that Stephen was stoned to death. Paul was executed. John the Baptist was beheaded, and then on and on and on. And so the Eastern Church, the Eastern Christian Church on the eastern side of the Mediterranean, was very mindful of those who had died proclaiming and defending the faith that they had discovered through Jesus. And so the Eastern Church decided very early to have a special day, which then was marked as May the 13th, to celebrate All Saints' Day. And the saints were those who had been martyred and who then were called into God's kingdom in heaven. Somewhere around the 600s or 7th century, Pope Gregory, who was the Pope in Rome, decided to consecrate a chapel within which had been part of the St. Peter's in Rome. And he decided to dedicate it to all the saints in heaven. That is to say, not only those who'd been martyred, but those who had lived faithful lives and had died and then went on into God's kingdom in heaven. The British, by the way, English then, in the somewhere around the 9th century, decided that they needed to have a special day in addition to All Saints' Day, and they decided they wanted to have it, by the way, on the same day that Pope Gregory had dedicated the chapel. And they chose then, instead of the 1st of November, the 2nd of November, and we still celebrate All Saints' Day on the 2nd November. They also decided to identify the day before All Saints' Day as Halloween. Hallow being holy, ween being eve. And so Halloween had its origins in the action and faith and practice of the early English church. And they would then celebrate all day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, if it fell on that period of time. But 3 days at least would be celebrated as Hallowtide. So we celebrate Halloween in various kinds of ways. In thinking about that, we tend to celebrate Halloween as a secular gathering rather than as a holy gathering. So just so you're clear, Halloween, as we celebrate with trick and treat, with ghost houses that kids go into to be frightened by, or by the horror movies, even the trailers, which scare me, and the advertisements, that is not part of who we are. Although very interesting, every culture, to my knowledge and to my limited research, would indicate that there's been some effort to identify those who have died and have gone to some other kind of afterlife. The Hindus, as an example, when someone dies, they're expected to cremate their body within 24 hours. Then the ashes are usually spread in some holy place like the Ganges River or some other location which is considered to be holy and sacred. They then, at the anniversary of 1 year of the person's death, have a special ceremony in their home, inviting friends and family to come and join them as they light candles, prepare special food, and then recall and remember the very special person who had been part of their life. So they too have a way of remembering. Hindus desire to move to the point of being attached, their soul that is, attached to Brahman, which is the God, which is the end of all of reincarnation. And you get there, according to Hindus, by having a quality life called karma. So the karma in your life leads you to becoming reincarnated finally, multiple times perhaps, or one time if you are particularly faithful and responsible to be close to the great God, Brahman. Now, if you have been in Mexico during the celebration of the Feast of the Dead. I tried to learn how to say the Spanish word, but it didn't come out the way they taught me on the internet. But the moment of the celebration of the dead is a particularly unique celebration that comes out of Central America and Mexico. And that Day of the Dead celebration has its origins really from two places. One, the Aztec religious activity in which the Aztecs would remember those who had died and often use skulls as a way of parading them around or setting them around a particular altar to remember those who had died, either great leaders or great soldiers or great persons within someone's life or community. That celebration, by the way, then when the conquistadors came to Mexico and Central America in the middle 1600s, became connected in some really strange and interesting way with the Souls Day, the sacred special day that the church had brought with it. So when the conquistadors came, so did the priests and the missionaries, and they taught the folks that they had encountered the Catholic faith, and the folks who were part of it also added their own traditions, which is not uncommon. By the way, you who still knock on wood for good luck, if you think only they have added to the faith that we have, we do the same quite frequently. So anyway, the Day of the Dead is celebrated in Mexico and Central America, southern parts of the United States, California, Arizona, New Mexico, Louisiana, Alabama, goes on and on and on, and all around the world. It's become both a national celebration. It is more of a celebration. However, one of the authors about the Day of the Dead indicates that one of the things that is important to know about it is that it is a way for people to remember they are mortal. Now, by the way, there are some very important things for us to learn from this day, which is today's All Saints' Day. Number one, it is not a celebration today and tomorrow of pumpkins and ghosts and goblins and decorations in your house. It is a sacred day to remember those who have gone before us, who have died, and who, through their faith, are now in the care and love of their God, who created them. The second thing to remember is that those folks, as we celebrate Hallow Eve and the Day of Great Saints, is that they often taught us lessons that we desperately need to live our lives. And so as we remember family members and friends during All Saints' Day, we should remember also the stories about them that added quality to our life, the lessons that they taught us, both by the mistakes they made and maybe the ways in which they were unfaithful, but also those ways in which they lived their lives in the image of a God and following Jesus. I remember, of course, my parents. They were faulted in all kinds of ways, as I am and as each of us is. But my mother and dad were absolutely devoted to making sure that their children got to church every Sunday, to Sunday evening Methodist Youth Fellowship gatherings, got us prepared to go to camp at Camp Byron and a score of other places, and were always asking us to be mindful of God's love and compassion. I remember, of course, my favorite uncle, Glenn, who taught me what loyalty is all about and what order is all about. And so I can blame him for the fact that in his shed, there was always a board that had the drawing of a tool that he had. If it was missing while we were there, he would always know we had not put it back. My Aunt Seal was a gentle and loving person, and neither, they had no children, but they had us, and they were loving and caring for us, and I really appreciate that. Ministers I had, and I've shared those names before: Roy Deming, Perry Saito, the Japanese-American who was in a concentration camp in California as a result of the Second World War. Perry Saito, who was not bitter, who was loving, gentle, kind. I remember fondly the host of ministers who added joy to our life. And interestingly enough, the little short gentleman who lived next door to us, Mr. Schumann, who would pat Andy on the top of the head as he was talking to him, even though Mr. Schumann was totally deaf. Andy would say, "The thing I like about him is he listens to me." These are the persons who have gone that I remember, and I'm grateful for the lessons they taught me. The other thing that I'm encouraging each of us to remember is that we are mortal. And by the way, when I die, if anyone says about my death that I passed away, I'm going to come back and haunt you. I will have not passed away. I will have died. However, you can say I passed into heaven if you think I am worthy of that. We are mortal. You know that. We are born, given life in a wonderful and precious way. And then we live that life. Sometimes we die very early. Spoke with someone last night whose sister or husband died, brother died, very young as a result of COVID. And we do die. There's no question about it. The fourth thing I'd want us to remember about All Saints' Day and Hallow Eve is that indeed we are promised through Jesus that in every instance in which we die, God will reach out to us. And Jesus says, there's room for you, all of you. Again, I hear Jesus say about Jesus, God so loved the world. God so loved the world, the whole world. I'm also impressed with a score of other things that I have both read and seen that Jesus has said to us and that Paul has said to us. I want you to hear these words, remember these words. So death, says Paul, where is your victory? Tell me, death, where is your harm? And then the words of Jesus who said, Father, into your hands I give my soul. So celebrate tomorrow and worship tomorrow, All Saints' Day. And this evening, think about Hallow Eve, the night before All Saints' Day, and give thanks to your God, both for those who live before you, whoever they may be. Remember their lessons and their wisdom and their faith and their sacrifice. And then find ways to embrace both the joy and the cost of discipleship of Jesus. Trust this Jesus with your soul. Amen.